Victoria DeFrancesco Soto is an MSNBC contributor and a professor at the University of Texas. And Ryan Reilly covers the Justice Department for the Huffington Post. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to start off with the substance of Eric Holder before we get to sort of how much agony he causes for the Republican Party. He's done reforms to federal sentencing guidelines for certain drug crimes. He's blocked and sued to block restrictive voting laws. He's restored voting rights, pushed to restore voting rights to ex-convicts, extending federal recognition and benefits to same-sex couples. It's a very activist agenda. So, Ryan, I think when you look at this, and I've heard Eric Holder called kind of the progressive id of the Obama administration, are we really seeing Eric Holder's kind of progressive activism, or is this more reflective of President Obama, or both?
Well, I think it's really interesting, especially when you consider where Holder was just a few years ago, and sort of this mentality of sort of lurching from scandal to scandal. And now he really is a major voice for reform, and he's gotten a little bit of pushback in some of the initiatives that he's done executively from within the Justice Department, from some career prosecutors, and he's really sort of shaking things up.
And I mean, if you look at it, Victoria, early on, as Ryan mentions, in his tenure, there was a lot of pushback actually from the left over the Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the inability to prosecute him on American soil and some other issues. But he really kind of has become, I guess, sort of the progressive kind of hero within the administration. Would you agree with that? Or is he really just carrying out what really is a White House agenda by another means?
Well, I think he's doing things that President Obama can't directly do because of all of the stalemate in Congress. And I think it's very important to notice the context. We're in a very different context right now. So the VRA, as of last year, suddenly doesn't exist as we knew it, with Section 5 being taken away. And we see him very aggressively putting forward Section 3, trying to proactively protect civil rights. I also think it's interesting what he's doing. So in terms of immigration, for example, a federal law states that every city, every state has to comply with secure communities. A number of states and communities are bucking that and saying we're not going to enforce secure communities, and we haven't seen Eric Holder go in and say, well, I'm going to go after you for not enforcing those laws. So it's what he does and doesn't do.
Well, Ryan, that's a good point. Let's just push on that just for a little bit, because immigration really does seem to be kind of the sticking point now, where the White House, the Obama administration, is really clashing with a fundamental part of their base. Is it your expectation, having covered this Justice Department, that there will be more activism, more aggressive activism, and more aggressive pushback to really test the limits of how far the Attorney General could go in terms of relaxing some of the, I guess, more onerous parts of the deportation regime?
To a certain extent, but right now I think one of his priorities really is working with Congress, as difficult as that might be, especially on some of the things in terms of his, the Smart on Crime initiative. He really does want to work with Congress, and he has had some, meetings with members from the other side of the aisle, including talking about felony disenfranchisement with Rand Paul. So that's something I think is really going to be a priority. So I think that he's going to take a little bit of a cautious approach, given what they've done already in terms of executive action, to make sure that they don't alienate too many people further, I guess, on the Republican side of the aisle, to see if they can in any way work together.
Well, I mean, Ryan says that the Attorney General is attempting to work with Congress. I want you to take a listen to what he said at the National Action Network last week, because it doesn't sound to me like he thinks it's a working relationship. Take a listen.
You look at the way, and forget about me. Forget about me. You look at the way the Attorney General of the United States was treated yesterday by a House committee. Had nothing to do with me. Forget that. What Attorney General has ever had to deal with that kind of treatment? What president has ever had to deal with that kind of treatment?
And, Vicki, you add to that the contempt citation. You now have a Texas Republican, Brent Farenthold, introducing the Contempt Act that would actually cut the federal pay of officials who've been held in contempt of Congress, etc. Is this, in your mind, an unprecedented and unprecedentedly nasty, I guess you'd say, relationship between an Attorney General and members of Congress he's supposed to work with?
I do. And for example, Louis Gohmert, I have the dubious honor of being from his home state, is one of these prime actors. I think what's going to happen is you have your Louis Gohmerts, you have these people who are very aggressive and pushing back on Eric Holder. But Eric Holder is incredibly smart, and he knows that there are some Republicans that are a little bit more moderate, and that he can work with them. Maybe on some issues he can push the envelope forward, say with Rand Paul, and others he can't. So I think he's smart enough to know that he's going to have to pick and choose with the GOP.
All right, indeed. Victoria DeFrancesco Soto and Ryan Reilly. Thanks to both of you.
Thanks.